Hare Krishna. It's really good. After a day of running around, take care of this, take care of that, what about this, what about that? Read Bhagavad-gītā. Refresh consciousness and awareness of the transcendence. You know, it would be really nice if there was someone out there that was maybe watching this video that would like to read together. It really enhances the experience, the transcendental experience, when together people approach the Lord together. Approach the scriptures that have been left by the realized souls. So if anyone's seeing this video that would like to, we could go like on a live stream, maybe Google Plus, or there are other programs out there, and we could take turns reading, and if there was any, had some realizations about what we're reading, or some discussion, or some questions, or some doubts, whatever. You could leave a comment below on the YouTube. For now, since it's just me, I'm just pre-recording it on a webcam. But if there's anyone out there that would like to read together, study together, approach transcendence together, it'd be very nice. So, I'm going to read a little from Bhagavad-gītā, and here it is. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nivishesa Sunyabadi Paskitadi Satarne. So we're going to pick up where I left off. Last time I read, I was really tired, and I didn't even know if I should post it, because oh boy, the reading was really embarrassing the way I was reading. It's like half asleep. But that happens too, so. This is text 54, and this is chapter 2 of the Bhagavad-gītā as it is, translated with commentary by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, my teacher. And Arjuna is being bewildered by the material atmosphere, material attachments, material situation. He's hesitating to fight. He's the general. He's supposed to lead the armies. But he's overcome by seeing who is there willing to fight. It's all people he knows. Relatives, former teachers, his grandfather. They're all there, and they're on the other side. And no matter whose side the different people are on, if they fight with each other, they're going to be fighting to try and kill each other. But these are armies. These are trained soldiers, and that's what they do. They fight. These aren't civilians. This is what soldiers do, is they train to fight. But this particular war had a lot of problems for Arjuna, because all the leaders of the world were assembled on the battlefield to fight. And if they were to fight and to kill each other, that would leave the world leaderless. And the battle did end up being fought, and everyone was killed. And what we're experiencing now, 5,000 years later, is the outcome. And Arjuna could see it. He knew that the world would be in a very difficult situation as far as good leadership. And he knew that the rogues and thieves would take over. And that's another reason he was hesitating to fight. But it was Krishna's desire. It was time for the Kali Yuga, which is the most degraded age. There are 4 ages. Satya Yuga, very elevated. It's like a golden age. Treta Yuga, Torpa Yuga, and then Kali Yuga. They're seasons: summer, winter, spring, and fall. So it was time for Kali Yuga, and this battle ushered it in. But Arjuna, this is before the battle, and Arjuna's looking at the armies, and he's talking with Krishna. He's talking with the Lord. And the Lord is there, present, on his chariot, acting as his chariot driver. He's also within Arjuna's heart, acting as the master of his senses. So he's inside and he's outside. Same Krishna. So Arjuna said, he's asking questions. He says, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk? In Prabhupada's commentary. As there are symptoms for each and every man, in terms of his particular situation, similarly, one who is in Krishna consciousness has his particular nature. Talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms, so a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad-gītā. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks. For speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak. And certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna-conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to Krishna. Other symptoms then automatically follow, as stated below. I was thinking another important aspect of speaking is that a person be good at their word. There are so many falsities being broadcast, false promises, out and out lies, in all fields: government, economics, finance, business, practically everywhere you look. Even science. There's a lot of lying and cheating that goes on in so-called research. And so if a person is only, there should be a saying, a person is as good as their word. So speech really does reveal the person in a lot of different ways. Next verse, 55. The Blessed Lord said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of sense desire, which arise from mental concoction, when his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Yeah. That's really important. Everything is right in that verse. When a man gives up all varieties of sense desire, which arise from mental concoction. That's why I say the mind is the best friend, and the mind is also the worst enemy. Because the mind has the desires. And the heart is impure. It has these desires. The mind has them there. Keeps the impure desires of the heart are stored in the mind. And the mind takes them as its specific project to fulfill. So the mind's business is to try to fulfill material desires. The mind is purified by hearing about Krishna, hearing about God, and also being engaging the senses in acts of purification in service to the Lord. So when the mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, and not in running around trying to fulfill all these sense desires, then he's in pure transcendental consciousness. Prabhupada's commentary. The Bhagavad-gītā affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendentally situated has no good qualifications, because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped, but if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without any extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. Why? Because we have senses. And they come into contact with material things. And the desire to experience sensually, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, they arise from the sense perception. And then the mind contemplating on the objects of the senses. So artificially it can't be stopped by not engaging, not acting, or starving oneself, or whatever. The way the sense desires are stopped is, like Prabhupada is explaining, is by engagement in Krishna consciousness. So it's not that there's no eating, but the eating is purified because of the food being Krishna Prasad. Food offered to the Lord first in sacrifice. So the eating is there, and there is a certain amount of sense gratification there, but it's purified because it's relationship to Krishna. There's no other way. Everything has to be in relationship to Krishna. And when all the senses are engaged in relationship to Krishna, the smelling, the hearing, the tasting, the touching, and then the functions of the mind, the remembering, knowledge acquiring, everything in relationship to Krishna. So the activities aren't stopped. They can't be stopped. The activities cannot be stopped, but they must be directed toward the Lord in devotional service. So it's practiced like that. Under the direction of the realized souls who are already experiencing their loving relationship with God and have no problem with their senses or their mind. They're already transcended the material situation. Those are the kinds of teachers we want. Ones that are already have learned the subject and are experiencing their relationship with the Lord. They're the ones that are qualified to help the others. Text 56. One who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, who is not elated when there's happiness, who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Prabhupada's commentary. The word Muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every Muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a Muni differs from other Munis, he cannot be called a Muni in the strict sense of the term. But a Sthitādir Muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary Muni. The Sthitādir Muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He has surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa, or Vasudeva, is everything. He's called a Muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna-conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes it is due only to the Lord's grace, and that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he's always daring and active, and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification. Detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he's not at all angry, even when his attempts are unsuccessful. A Krishna-conscious person is always steady in his determination. Wow. Talk about no anxiety. anxiety-less. It's interesting. He's fixed in Krishna consciousness. He has neither attachment nor detachment. He's simply engaged in Krishna's service. There's nothing to be attached to, and there's nothing to be detached from. It's like two sides of the same coin. Like, I want, or I don't want. It's not a matter of that. It's just using whatever it is in Krishna's service. There's no, I have to be detached. And there's no, oh, I want it. It doesn't enter into it. Nice place to be. Whew, that's the power of devotional service. In that consciousness, anything can be used in the service of the Lord. All opulence can be used in the service of the Lord. Because it's not a matter of attached or detached, it's a matter of using it for Krishna. See, that's freedom. That's the benefit of being a servant of the Lord. Can do wonderful things that way. Text 57. He who is without attachment, who does not rejoice when he obtains good, nor lament when he obtains evil, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. It's a little more kind of elaboration on what was discussed previously about attachment and detachment. So, not overly overjoyed when something good comes, and not devastated when something bad happens. It's just in the course of serving the Lord, there's going to be good, there's going to be bad. But remain steady, because it's simply a servant of the Lord. Prabhupada's commentary. There's always some upheaval in the material world which may be good or evil. One who's not agitated by such material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there's always the possibility of good and evil, because this world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil. He is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good, absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in a perfect transcendental position called, technically, samadhi. Text 58. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is to be understood as truly situated in knowledge. Prabhupada's commentary. The test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he's able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi, or the devotee, must be very strong to control the serpents, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures Some of them are do's, or do-nots, and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do-nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it's not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up his senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious person are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise, who keeps the senses within. That's a pretty clear description, and it makes sense. But in practicing, it takes a lot of practice for some people, like me. Look at the turtle, okay, the tortoise. There's some danger there. And if he doesn't recognize the danger, he doesn't withdraw his little feet, hands, and head back into his shell, he's going to get hurt. He's going to get hurt. So, if he gets hurt once, then the next time, that same danger is there. Those limbs are going to go inside that shell. So some people have to learn like that. And I have to admit, I'm one of the less intelligent people. And I can make the same mistake innumerable times. Until the turtle gets the idea. Oh, yeah, I know what this is. Okay, into the shell. Safe. Withdraw the senses. Let's see. There's 4 types of intelligence. The most intelligent person learns simply by hearing from actual authority, from the realized souls. They hear good instruction, they've got it just by hearing, because they have first-class intelligence. There's another type of intelligence, it's more second-rate. They may hear about the dangers of a certain activity, but they don't respond properly when they're faced with that particular situation, and they make a mistake like that. They don't act on what they've heard, and they learn that way. That's how they learn, is they had the good instruction and they heard it, but then they didn't act on it. And so they experienced the reaction. And then they got it. Okay, they said it was like this, and now I experienced it, I've got it. No problem, I've got it. When that situation arises, senses are withdrawn. Learned the hard way. But there's yet another type of intelligence, which is even slower to learn. And that's the person that hears the instruction and gets the information, such and such activity causes such and such detrimental effect, so don't engage in it. They hear it, and it kind of makes sense. And they see somebody else get the reaction from performing the activity. They see them get the reaction. And so they see, oh yeah, That is what happens when you do such and such. But they don't they go ahead and they engage in the activity anyway. Even though they heard, they saw, and they go ahead and they do it anyway. But then they learn. Oh yeah, I heard it. Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah, right, I saw it. And oh my God, I did it and I got it. Okay, I got it. And they learn that way. So that's like third-class intelligence. But at least they got it. The really hard way. But then there's another kind of intelligence. It's really the worst kind of intelligence. They hear the good instruction. Well, it sort of makes sense. They see somebody get the reaction. Ugh. Yeah. Oh. And they go ahead and they do it themselves. And they get the reaction. But they still don't learn. They go ahead and they do it again. They get the reaction. And they do it again and they get the reaction. And they do it again and they get the reaction. And they don't learn. Or maybe after a very long period of suffering from the reactions, they finally get it. Oh, I got it. Yeah. So, this example of the turtle is good. And the first-class intelligent person simply by hearing. But however one learns, you have to learn how to withdraw the senses from the sense enjoyment. Sense enjoyment comes automatically in the course of serving the Lord. The eating is there, the very nice food, nice things to look at are there, nice things to hear are there. The senses have their objects, purified objects. The sense desires and sense enjoyment that's being asked to be withdrawn from is this unrestricted sense enjoyment, where the senses just are given free rein to run all over the place. That has a very bad ending for a transcendentalist. The senses become impure. The mind becomes disturbed and entangled in identification with the temporary material body and senses as the self. Intelligence is lost. Fall down into forgetfulness of the spirit. And then all that's important is matter and the senses. And the unfortunate thing about that is the senses are never satisfied. They just drag the person around and around and around and around. And they're never actually satisfied. So, keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. Text 59. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he's fixed in consciousness. So these verses are all giving different angles of vision on the same subject. How the senses are controlled. Because Arjuna asked that question, how does a person in transcendence function? What does he do? So this is Krishna's answering, explaining the activities of the purified soul. So the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. And that's the problem, is the taste for the objects of the senses. I mean, just by restricting, it doesn't get rid of the taste or the desire. That's what's meant by artificial. And Krishna says, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he's fixed in consciousness. So that's the secret. The higher taste is spirit, Krishna. Service to Krishna. That's the higher taste. Prabhupada's commentary. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it's not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyama, etc. is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good if one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. So even restrictions, the person who's making advancement by following the restrictions, the reason the restrictions are there is because the desire is still there. So the restrictions are there, but they're only good if the person actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. Just to have restrictions for the sake of restrictions, what good is that? It's horrible. Who would want to suffer like that perpetually? So, to willingly accept restrictions, knowing that by restricting the senses, even though there's still some desire for sense enjoyment, but by accepting restrictions and rules, with the understanding that this is purification and will help me in my progress toward devotion to Krishna, love of Krishna, Krishna consciousness, then the restrictions and the rules and regulations actually have value. But Prabhupada says, when one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. He sees sense enjoyment through the senses as something dead. There's no life there. There's no pleasure there. It's not even attractive at all. It's not at all attractive. Why? Because they're experiencing a higher taste in relationship to the Lord. Spirit, not matter. Spirit's where it's at. Hare Krishna. Text 60. Krishna continues. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Isn't that the truth? Prabhupada's commentary. There are many learned sages, philosophers, transcendentalists who try to control the senses. But in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment, although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are so many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it's very difficult to control the mind and the senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot see such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, "Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor. Whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it. I spit at the thought." Hare Krishna. That's how powerful devotional service to the Lord is. That thought of having sense enjoyment through sexual relations is like something dead. It's just matter. There's no attraction to the person fully in Krishna consciousness. And that's the way. There's a list of yogis here, different yogis who, well, Vishwamitra is mentioned, but great mystics. They perform austerities for thousands of years. They meditate in caves. They eat dry leaves. They breathe once every month. But it doesn't work. Because the mind becomes agitated, confronted with sensual enjoyment. But then on the other hand, you have someone like Haridas Thakur, great devotee, who appeared in Chaitanya Lila 500 years ago, the appearance of Krishna Chaitanya. Even though he was confronted with a beautiful woman who came there to seduce him, to break his vows, tried to allure him, trap him sensually. She ended up becoming a Krishna conscious devotee. Chanting hundreds of thousands of rounds a day. She became his disciple. She came there to disturb his mind, make him fall down into material sense enjoyment. But because he was fixed in Krishna consciousness, she ended up becoming his disciple, surrendering, giving up everything, chanting Hare Krishna. So, what is this Krishna consciousness? A little more to this purport by Prabhupada. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendentally nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarish also conquered a great yogi, Dvarsa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Text 61. One who restrains his senses, fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. Prabhupada's commentary. That the highest conception of yoga, perfection, is Krishna consciousness, is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it's not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarish, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride, and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications as mentioned in Bhagavad-gītā. These are the quotes from Bhagavatam. King Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, gauged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become Matpara, devotee of the Lord. The word Matpara is most significant in this connection. How one can become a Matpara is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarish. Srila Baladeva Vijayabhusan, a great scholar and acharya in the line of the Matpara, remarks, the senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As the small flames within burn everything within the room, similarly, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu, and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something which is not the Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain search for some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of the real yogi. Whoa. I want to read that one again about the flames. As the small flames within burn everything within the room, similarly, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. Hey, Krishna. Wow. Govinda. Text 62. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. From lust, anger arises. Oh, these verses are so nice. I mean, this is it in a nutshell. Contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. For attachment, lust develops. From lust, anger arises. Yeah. Prabhupada's commentary. One who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires while contemplating the objects of the senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they're not engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects. And the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Mayadevi, but Haridas easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above-mentioned verse of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association with the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fail, for the slightest thought of sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his senses. That's why the sannyasi who takes the renounced order of life, which means no personal relations, no family life, no girlfriend, no wife, no contact with siblings or parents, whatever. They become totally renounced so that they can travel and preach. For them to associate at all with women agitates their senses, and then they lose their ability to remain the renounced order. Because a person in the renounced order isn't necessarily a pure devotee of Krishna. That's something else. These are orders of society, student life, brahmachari, household life, vanaprast, retired life, with wife, retired with wife, but not working to maintain a household, traveling, going to holy places, traveling with the wife. And then the fully renounced position, the sannyasi, renounced of all family life, renounced of association with the wife and children and so on. I mean, they're orders of society. And someone in the renounced order may not be a completely pure devotee. So that ashram can remain intact when they don't associate with women at all. And that's to protect them so the senses don't become agitated. And then the mind becomes disturbed and then they can't function properly. Text 63. From anger, delusion arises. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When intelligence is lost, one falls down again to the material pool. So, putting the two verses together, contemplation of the objects of the senses without attachment. From attachment, lust. From lust, anger. And now in this verse, from anger, delusion. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. Memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, they fall down to material pool. How scientific can you get? I mean, there it is, you know. There it is right there. Spelled out. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and it happens every time. It's infallible. That's how the material energy works. Contemplation of the objects of the senses. Attachment. From attachment, lust. This is how it expands. From lust, anger. From anger, delusion. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. Intelligence is lost, fall down again. I am this body. I am this mind. Spirit, what's that? Prabhupada's commentary. By the development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects. And as a result, although they desire liberation from material bondage, they do not attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of material consciousness. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord, or the Absolute, being impersonal, cannot eat. Whereas an impersonalist tries to avoid good eatables, a devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and that he eats all that is offered to him in devotion. So, after offering good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasad. Thus everything becomes spiritualized. There's no danger of a downfall. The devotee takes prasad in Krishna consciousness, whereas the non-devotee rejects it as material. The impersonalist, therefore, cannot enjoy life due to his artificial renunciation, and for this reason, a slight agitation of the mind pulls him down again into the pool of material existence. It is said that such a soul, even though rising up to the point of liberation, falls down again due to his not having support in devotional service. There it is, another argument why devotional service to Krishna is the most potent. Actually, is the only way to really get out of the material situation. Yeah, there it is. The impersonalists, they artificially avoid the objects of the senses. But the devotee doesn't avoid. See, that's that thing that was talked about in an earlier verse, attachment and detachment. So, the impersonalist is like someone who's trying to detach from everything. But actually, the way to become free from entanglement in the material energy is to use whatever it is in the service of Krishna. Then it becomes spiritualized. And there's no question of attachment or detachment. It's simply in service. Poor impersonalist. They can't enjoy life because of the artificial renunciation. And then if there's a slight agitation of the mind, it pulls him down again into the pool of material existence. Even rising up to the point of liberation, they fall down again. There's no support. There's no way to act. And the soul always has to be active. Krishna. Well, I think that's it for tonight for the Bhagavad-gītā reading. And nice way to end the day. Refresh. Take rest. Probably read a little Krishna book now. The actual pastimes of Krishna. What's actually going on in the spiritual world. And all glories to Srila Prabhupada.